listen to me at the State of the Union, or at least pretend to listen to me. So I'll try to keep it relatively brief, some opening remarks, and then open it up for questions. First of all, I just want to thank Harry Reid. I recently said he's got one of the toughest jobs in Washington. Managing an institution that, by its very nature, is, let's face it, you guys are a little difficult to manage. I've been a part of this caucus. I really don't think anybody could have done a better job under more trying circumstances than Harry Reid, and I think he deserves a huge round of applause. Now, let me start by saying we always knew this was going to be a difficult year to govern, an extraordinarily difficult year to govern. We began 2009 with a financial system on the brink of collapse, an economy bleeding nearly 700,000 jobs per month, a $1.3 trillion deficit, and two wars that were costly in every sense of the word. We knew that solutions wouldn't come easily or come quickly. We knew that the right decisions would be tough, and sometimes they would be unpopular. And we knew that we might have to make them sometimes without any help from our friends on the other side of the aisle. But we made those decisions. We led. Those actions prevented another Great Depression. They broke the back of a severe recession. The economy that was shrinking by 6% a year ago is now growing at nearly 6% 1 year later. That's because of the work that you did. Harry listed some of the work that you did on behalf of the American people, even under these difficult circumstances. Extending health insurance to 4 million children, protecting consumers from getting ripped off by their credit card companies and kids being targeted by big tobacco. Some things that weren't noted or didn't get a lot of attention. You reformed defense spending by eliminating waste and saved taxpayers billions while keeping us safe at the same time. You gave billions of dollars of tax relief to small businesses and 95% of working families here in America. You did all this despite facing enormous procedural obstacles that are unprecedented. You may have looked at these statistics. You had to cast more votes to break filibusters last year than in the entire 1950s and 60s combined. That's 20 years of obstruction packed into just one. But you didn't let it stop you. As Harry mentioned, though, our mission is far from accomplished. Because while the worst of the storm has passed, far too many Americans are still hurting in its wake. I know you've seen it back home in the shuttered businesses, the foreclosed homes. You've heard it from constituents who are desperate for work. And we've seen it in the burdens that families have been grappling with long since this recession hit, issues that we've been talking about now for years. The burden of working harder and longer for less, of being unable to save enough to retire or to help a kid with college expenses, the extraordinarily constant rising costs of health care. These problems haven't gone away. It's still our responsibility to address them. All that's changed in the last 2 weeks is that our party's gone from having the largest Senate majority in a generation to the second largest Senate majority in a generation. And we've got to remember that. There was apparently a headline after the Massachusetts election. The Village Voice announced that Republicans win a 41-59 majority. It's worth thinking about. We still have to lead. Saving and creating jobs have to continue to be our focus in 2010. Last year, we gave small business the engines of job creation, tax relief, and expanded lending through the SBA. I don't know if you are aware that SBA loans have gone up 70-80%, which, by the way, indicates the degree to which there is still huge demand among small businesses. Some of the banks are saying, well, we're not lending because there's not as much demand out there. There are a lot of small businesses that are hungry for loans out there right now. And we've made progress, but they're still struggling. So I've proposed additional ideas to help small businesses start up and hire. to raise wages and expand and get the credit they need to stay afloat. You've made some of these same proposals as well. We should put them into action without delay. We've invested in America's infrastructure, rebuilding roads and bridges and ports and railways, and putting people to work, strengthening our communities and our country. And as you know, the Recovery Act was designed so that a lot of that work is going to be taking place this year, not just last year. Many of the projects you funded come online in the next 6 months, but we can do more, and we should do so without delay. Through the investments you made in clean energy startups, we've not only helped put Americans to work, we're on track to double our nation's capacity to generate renewable energy over the next few years. I proposed additional tax credits that will promote private sector hiring and energy conservation. We should do that without delay. I think ideas like this should be pretty palatable to the other party. They seem pretty common sense, pretty centrist. We should be able to hear their ideas as well. That's why I spoke to the Republican caucus last Friday. I think it was to the country's benefit that we had an open and frank discussion about the challenges facing the American people and our ideas to solve them. I got to admit, I had a little fun at that caucus. Now, obviously, on some issues, we didn't agree, but on some we did. And I'm reminded that when it came to health insurance reform in particular, I sought out and supported Republican ideas from the start. So did you. Max Baucus, where's Max? I think he can testify to spending a little time listening to Republican ideas. So can Chris Dodd and Tom Harkin. You considered hundreds of Republican amendments and incorporated many of their ideas into the legislation that passed the Senate. So when I start hearing that we should accept Republican ideas, let's be clear, we have. What hasn't happened is the other side accepting our ideas. And I told them, I want to work together when we can, and I meant it. I believe that's the best way to get things done for the American people. But I also made it clear that we'll call them out when they say they want to work with us, and we extend a hand and get a fist in return. Last week, for example, you put up for a vote a bill I supported. Conrad, Gregg, Fiscal Commission. We were assured this was going to be bipartisan, only to see 7 Republicans who co-sponsored the idea in the first place suddenly decide to vote against it. Now, I'm open to honest differences of opinion, but what I'm not open to is changing positions solely because it's good short-term politics.